Right, yeah, and it's your show. I get to sit back.
Yeah, you just get to, well, I don't know. You're kind of a, since it's, anyway.
Yeah, we got it.
Yeah.
This is Lisa Ferris, CMO of Soundtrack Your Brand. You're listening to the business side of music.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
Well, guess what, folks? If you're listening to this episode, you obviously know it's the business side of music with your host, Bob Bender. That's me. But what you don't know is we're doing another one of those Between the Notes episodes.
We are. And Bob, thank you so much. I'm feeling like I'm a special guest contributor to the business side of music.
I like that.
And I'm digging that.
Special guest contributor, Jack Sharkey.
There you go.
Sitting here in the studio in Nashville, Tennessee. It's funny, you and I have such in-depth conversations before we even hit the record button.
Yeah, like we were just having here.
Yeah.
We've already got our next special guest contributing issue already set. So
it's another one of those special editions of Between the Notes on the business side of music, which I have to tell you, I looked at our numbers. I always look at the numbers, what the podcast is doing, and we up, we down, what countries are listening to us, where our listeners at. And the last episode that you and I did, which I think something had to do with alligators in the Everglades.
Well, there was talk of alligators, and I'm not sure what the reference was now, but
in the conversation, that has now turned out to be our second most listened to episode ever.
Ever. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm a little flummoxed here on what to say.
So if you think you're getting out of ever doing this again,
Dude, that's exciting. I mean, that makes it a lot more fun. If now we have to, I got to shoot for number one, and I'm gonna be honest with you, Bob. You've had some people on this show.
Well,
so.
and in a good way. I loved the numbers that I saw, and I just thought, anyway, it was episode 307. We titled it An Alligator Walking Through the Everglades.
Yes, which you have this brilliant ability to take all of these brain dribblings that I just spout out and don't even remember what I'm talking about and make it actually seem like something. So when I saw the title of the episode, I was like, I wonder what he's on about. And I was like, oh, yeah, I remember I used that weird sort of reference that I used. Yeah,
it fit perfect. and obviously it captured enough people's attention that they listened to the show. This episode, a special edition of Between the Notes here on the business side of music, it's April.
Yeah.
And what happens in April? I'll tell you one of the things that happens in April is 420 Day.
That is true. And we did an episode on Between the Notes last year specifically about 420 Day.
420 Day being the day that they honor cannabis. At least in the United States and not in the world. Not that has anything to do with music, but if you know most musicians.
Depends. Yeah. I'm sorry.
There is some involvement there. But there's something else happening on 420 this year.
Yeah. Record Store Day.
Record Store Day. You never thought something like that would get as popular as it has, but on 420, 2024, is, I guess it's either National or International Record Day. I should know these things, but it's Record Day.
It started in the UK in 2007 or thereabouts.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, I understand the size of it here in the United States. I don't know that it's worldwide, but I think it's a US-UK kind of a thing. And now, like, it's a movement. It has its own website, right? Record Store Day is actually a thing now. There's recordstoreday.com, and there's pressing companies and record labels and stuff that save special editions of their albums for it. I know in the UK, it became a thing where, it would be special editions and special mastered older pieces, or, artists would just specifically have something available on Record Store Day, and that's become the norm here. I work closely with United Record Pressing right here in downtown Nashville, USA.
Absolutely.
Yep. Wonderful, wonderful people responsible for pretty much all the vinyl that you listen to nowadays. And they gear up for Record Store Day months and months in advance. Now, you're right, it happens twice a year.
I did not know that.
April is the official Record Store Day, and then there's an adjunct Record Store Day that coincides with Black Friday in November.
Makes sense.
Which is brilliant when you think about it. Yeah. Before we start, I got a great story.
Before we start.
Yeah. Oh, we already started.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, okay. But
It's too
before
late.
we really start.
Okay.
I'm wearing a hat in your honor today.
Hackettstown, New Jersey.
Hackettstown, New Jersey. Debbie and I were there a couple weeks ago to see family, and that area made the news today.
They had a little 4.8 on the Richter scale earthquake. Now, you're a California guy. You were just telling me these are the earthquakes I've been in. I was in Sylmar, and I was in Northridge. And what was the other one you were in? Kalinga.
Yeah.
Right? Which, quite frankly, it's like a made-up name, so I just didn't even think about
It's actually a state penitentiary there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's where, what's the big record producer?
Oh, yeah, sure. The guy with the gun.
Come on,
the guy with the Ronettes and the Phil Spector.
That's where Phil Spector spent some time. It's where Charlie Manson spent some time in Kalinga at the state penitentiary there.
Well, I survived the Marlborough, New Jersey earthquake of 2011, which was about a 3.8 or a 4.2 or something. And
now, where's Marlborough, New Jersey?
That's kind of where I'm from. It's down on the shore.
Oh, okay.
You're right. It's, say, maybe halfway on a straight line between Manhattan and Atlantic City. Right, roughly in the area. I happened to be in my office in Marlborough, New Jersey that day when that earthquake happened, and I got to tell you, it's quite an experience if you've never been through one before, and obviously, thank goodness, this one today was pretty minor.
It will shake you up, though.
Yeah,
literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
So anyway, not to get off subject, but to all of our New Jersey listeners. Between the Notes and Business Side of Music, we hope you're all doing well.
Stay smooth out there when the floor gets a rumbling.
Yeah. And I had my first, honest-to-goodness, New Jersey bagel when we were back there.
Finally, you've lived.
You talked about them and talked about them.
I told you.
And Saturday morning, we got up and we drove like 20 minutes to this little deli out in the middle. God knows where.
That's right.
In the country. The closest house was probably a quarter mile away, and that house had been built in like 1650.
That area of New Jersey is stunning because it's very rural. It's very old.
Yeah.
Yet there's a lot of money out that way.
And that was the most amazing bagel.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I didn't have to eat the rest of the day until the next day when we went to Newark. Mm-hmm. Because we decided to take the cruise to Ellis Island and then the Statue of Liberty.
Sure.
And our son-in-law said, I found this place. It's the best burgers in New Jersey. We're going to go there. And it was in Newark.
Okay.
And it was called, I believe, Krug's or Krug's, Krug''. Been in business since 1932.
Okay.
And I ordered this blue cheese buffalo dip cheeseburger.
Yeah.
This thing came out, it was a side of beef. Okay, that was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I still have not eaten a hamburger since. I can't bring myself to it.
No, it's a lot of food.
Oh, my God. It was a gut bomb.
And you get into certain bagel shops in the area, and they'll have the bagel, which is what is it, maybe 2.5, 3 inches thick, and then they'll go ahead and put another 2 to 3 inches of cream cheese on it.
Yeah,
right. And you're just eating cream cheese, which in every other aspect of your life is horribly disgusting. But on a good salted bagel out of the proper place, it's the right thing to go. So listen, I don't live in New Jersey anymore. I don't particularly miss living in New Jersey. I miss 3 things about New Jersey: the ocean, the bagels, and the pizza. I don't care. 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 I There is no other pizza. You have your Chicago deep dish. You got whatever you got. You don't have New Jersey pizza. Not even New York has New Jersey pizza. And I'm sorry if this is going to offend your New York listeners. This is the price you paid when you asked me to come on the show.
That's true.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I'm glad you had a great trip. And I was following you there on the old Facebook machine. And you're at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yep. Went to Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We did the Rock Gods Hall of Fame Awards show in Cleveland, which was really cool, and then went to New Jersey and saw family. And glad to be back in Nashville, though. I got to tell you that. So, with that all being said, now that we've discussed my travel log over the last 2 weeks, Record Day, 17 years it's now been going.
Yeah.
I looked it up.
And it's a great thing. Now, it actually predates the vinyl revival, which I kind of put back to about 2011. So all of you folks who were in your mid-20s to mid-30s, 13, 14 years ago, I thank you personally, and so do a lot of people, for the vinyl resurgence. It became a very chic-y thing to do that was, in some cases, less about the audio of the album and more about the listening experience, which if you're a musician or you're in this business, that should make you feel really good about things because, music is everywhere, right? You get to the point, who cares? But the listening experience is the thing that keeps people coming back and back and back. You look at what's happening, today with albums, right? I'm dating myself, but when I say albums, Bob, I'm referring to vinyl, right?
Correct.
Yep. And there's this wonderful resurgence involving the experience of going and buying, or maybe you're ordering it, but sitting and listening and reading the liner notes and doing all those things, which is just such a great respite from the rest of the world. Now, there is, of course, the argument of, does it sound better? Is vinyl better? There are actual physical reasons why you might enjoy vinyl more than, say, a CD or streaming. And I can go into that now if you want, or you want to talk about some other business things of Record Store Day?
Well, one of the things that you brought up I want to discuss, but I want to back up a little bit.
Okay.
Because you triggered a memory.
Okay.
When you said, you go to the store and you buy or you order one, and I immediately went to the old Columbia House days.
Man. Yeah.
And for any of you that are 50 or younger, you're not going to know what we're talking about.
No.
But there used to be a time you would get in magazines or newspapers or the Sunday fillers, join Columbia House today, and for what was it, a penny?
It was a penny. You get like 13 records.
Yeah, you get 13 records.
Yeah.
With the assurance that when you sign this piece of paper, mail in your penny for those 13 records, and it was a big selection of what you could choose music-wise, that you had to buy so many albums over the next 2 years. And, of course, what we would always do is, you would buy that bare minimum.
Right.
And then you would cancel it, and then you'd start over again and get another 13 albums. It's how we built our record collections back then.
No lie, shortly, I guess right around high school graduation, I had a teenage relationship end with a young lady, and to spite me, she signed me up for Columbia House. I'm like, oh, well, hurt my feelings. Just give me, the free 13 records. I got to buy 10 more records for $13.98. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
It was a great way, like you said, to amass your library. I can think I've probably joined it 3 to 4, maybe 5 times in my life to get that rush of records, Sadly now, maybe, you don't get that. However, the opposite, the bad end of Columbia House was the K-Tel records.
Oh, yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Those horrible memories, right?
Yeah.
Because they would squish those grooves so tight, there would be no bottom end on them. They would fit, a typical record fits about 44 minutes, which is roughly 7 to 8 songs split over the 2 sides, right? That's the physical upper range of what you can do and have it still sonically sound well. Of course, K-Tel would put, they'd put 28 minutes of music on one side and it just would sound like this and you listen to it, but that was the deal, $4.99, and you'd get all those songs that you wouldn't normally go out and buy, right?
And it was always late night television that those commercials would come on, and they would tell you, run to your local Thrifty or Rite Aid or, the drugstores carried that.
Right.
They were end cap pieces. If you had a store in town that had a record department, K-Tel wasn't in that.
No.
But the local drugstore or the convenience store, they would carry the K-Tel records.
Yeah, it was horrible. But, luckily now what's happening with Record Store Day that makes it even better is it's an event. So from the record plants, and the labels and the artists and the stores, they're putting extra effort in. So they're quality records,
which I want to talk about.
Yeah,
but let's take a break.
Okay.
Because unlike other podcasts, we have advertisers.
We got to pay the bills.
We got sponsors here, and
right.
I would like to incorporate them into the show. So we're going to come back because I have a real heavy-duty question to ask you about that.
I got answers.
We'll hope.
A lot of them are not accurate, but I've got answers.
It might pertain to something else. But we're going to take a break, get a word in for a couple of our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going to have some more conversation on this special edition of Between the Notes here on the Business Side of Music with Jack Sharkey.
You're listening to the Business Side of Music.
This is Mark Allen Barnett, singer, songwriter, creative coach, and mentor. Are you an artist or songwriter or a family member or friend of someone who is? Are you trying to find your way through the often confusing world of today's music business? I'm here to help. Over the past 40 years, I've written and recorded hit songs, have had more than my share of live performances, and have seen the ups and downs of the music industry and what Music City, also known as Nashville, has to offer. I'm here to share that information with you. The Mark Allen Barnett Songwriting Tours of Nashville are a one-day to multi-day private interactive workshops developed to help you discover your best approach to songwriting, performing in front of a live audience, along with the correct way to network within the music industry. Our workshops are based around what you need to know. While in Nashville, you get an insight from behind the scenes, learn about the history of Music City, separate fact from fiction, and give yourself or a loved one the time of your life. This workshop makes the perfect gift for someone you love who wants to get their foot in the door of the music business the right way. For more information, go to www.markallenbarnett.com or www.musicchoosesyou.com. Remember, you don't choose music. Music chooses you.
You're listening to the Business Side of Music.
Are you fed up with constantly searching for the records you want? Are you tired and frustrated from always straightening out your LPs? Now with K-Tel Record Selector, this will never happen again. To choose your favorite music, tilt the first record forward. The others follow automatically. Pick your selection when it appears. To choose more LPs, lean the next record forward and wait for your choice. The Record Selector is a new space-age design for selection and storage of records. Fingertip control regulates the speed of Record Selector. To replace the records, tilt the first record forward. Record Selector, with a mind of its own, will automatically stop where the LP was taken from. End awkward selection and storage of LPs with Record Selector, attractively finished in a gift box. K-Tel Record Selector, only $3.99.
Back in the studio, sitting across the podcast table from me, Jack Sharkey, who is the creator, founder, grand poobah, and overall wizard of the Between the Notes podcast.
Wow.
That we have now since incorporated into the business side of music.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad we do because
I'm thrilled, man. This is awesome.
it's more than just filler. It's more than fluff. We really get into the meat and potatoes. Normally, we'll have someone who's pitching their wares and they're pitching their services. But you and I really kind of get into the politics of the music business.
You dive down, right? And that's it. Listen, commerce and pitching is great. I got nothing to pitch. I have.
You don't have a dog in this hunt.
I do not.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
This is why we have these conversations. Yeah. So, record day. Here's something that came up in a conversation, and I wish I could remember where it came up from. The MP3. Which came when?
Well, about 1991 was when it was probably first developed and released, and it would be, really we're going to start seeing MP3s hit the market at the end of the 90s with the Napster revolution and all. So, from a technical standpoint, you're looking at about 1991. From a commercial standpoint, when the first iPods came out.
Yeah. So 8, 9, maybe 10 years later.
A decade later.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember 2001, when I was in the record business, we all were scratching our heads. Why are people downloading MP3s? Because the quality's not nearly as good.
Right.
This conversation came up about pressing plants. And
Okay.
you mentioned this in the beginning of our conversation, how record pressing facilities hardly keeping up with the demand of vinyl.
Right.
Okay. And they have to plan months and months and months ahead. Conversation came up where someone said, you need to be careful when you buy vinyl because some record labels, when they submit the master, it's not the vinyl master, it's the CD master. Is there a difference?
So I got to take you back to the sort of the early days of the CD and then vinyl mastering. So when you master for vinyl, you can't have too much bass energy in there because the actual vinyl itself, the needle, the rumble, the whole bit gets added in. So if you put too much bass energy into a vinyl master, the groove, the needle will literally jump out of the groove. Literally too much energy. So, but when you're listening to it on vinyl, it's okay. And this goes into dynamic range and dynamic response and a bunch of other technical things. But, to suffice to say, the turntable itself, the act of listening to vinyl adds that bass back in for you. CDs don't do that because there's no mechanical vibration, there's no rumble, there's anything like that. So now, as the record labels are trying to figure out, do I invest in this? This seems like a real, it's either going to be a cash cow or a cash grab of some sort that's going to make us bankrupt. They weren't really sure. They would take the masters from the vinyl. So let's say, Elton John record or whatever, they were going to reissue a CD. They would not remaster it. So when you listened to it on CD, it sounded tinny. There was no bass. It was horrible. So the first 10 years or so of CD sounded miserable until we learned that CDs weren't going anywhere. And it was a really very short-lived commodity. CDs only really lasted about 15 years when you think about it.
When you compare it to vinyl, yes, because vinyl was around for quite a long time.
Yeah, by the mid '80s, it had already been around. The actual vinyl record, as we know it, had been around since 1947. So you were looking at a good 40-year run on that, and then the acetate and so on and so forth was another 40 years before that. So then, when the record labels started learning how to master for CD, this whole new technology, then you started getting some really high quality recordings. And it cannot be denied that the dynamic range of a CD is greater than that of a vinyl record. It's just a technical fact. So whatever from the very, very bottom to the very, very top of the frequency range is going to be there. It's going to be strong. It's going to be powerful. So technically, CDs will sound better than vinyl, technically. From a human point of view, vinyl is always going to sound a little better to us because there's even harmonics that get added. There's all this other things that are very analog in nature, very, very natural to us. So we have a visceral response within ourselves that it makes it sound better until you learn how to listen. And when you learn how to listen, CD is superior to vinyl. It may not be more enjoyable, but it's superior. Now, when you get involved in high-resolution streaming or high-resolution files, they blow CDs out of the water. It's just that much better.
But are all streaming files or MP3 files, are they high resolution?
They're not all created equal. And that goes back to the beginning of what your question actually was. So if you go the opposite way and you take a CD or a digital master, let's just add streaming in the whole bit and just call it a digital master, and you press for vinyl, it's going to sound very muddled in the low end. It's going to sound very bassy. It's not going to sound natural at all. So you're right, it works both ways. You've got to have a record label or an engineer or an artist that insists on having a vinyl master, period, and a digital master. It doesn't matter if it's CD or streaming. Digital is digital.
How do you know the difference when you go into the record store to buy that vinyl? I mean, you're paying $20, $25 for it these days.
Right. Well, that's a problem. And it is, some labels and manufacturers will address that, but you've got to do a little bit of research on your own. And sadly, there's a lot of trust that gets involved. If you have a high-end or a well-established label with a well-established artist, they're going to be very picky about the sound, about their product. But that's no different than artists 30 and 40 years ago who would put out really high-quality recordings, because that's what they wanted to have for their own art, and artists who didn't do real high quality recordings, right? So you're not going to be able to walk into a record store, at least as far as I know so far, and go, mastered for vinyl. You're not going to see that anywhere. There's no standards. It's still the Wild West. Audio has always been the Wild West. It will always be the Wild West. I don't see that changing at any time. But the consumer is generally becoming more aware of this, and reputation's everything, right? So you screw me out of my $22 one time, you ain't going to get it out of me the next time, and that's what we have to depend on. So we need a consumer who's not only educated enough to know what they're listening to and what they're paying attention to, and I will assume that a vinyl consumer is. And then you need a record label that is going to be responsive to that consumer when they turn and go, I'm not going to spend the money on this garbage product. That's the way I see it at this point.
Record Store Day, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was devised to help to get feet back into the mom and pop record stores.
Yeah. It had very little to do with the actual record plant or the pressing or that's just a happy accident. It was literally to save retail at a small level.
What I find interesting now is, and going back to my record label days, we used to call on, and I may have thrown this out in another episode somewhere, but my job when I was director of sales at a certain record label, I had 26 accounts I had to call on, and they were all major accounts. I mean, Licorice Pizza and Warehouse and Tara Records and Sam Goody.
It's the big ones.
And then you had the big box stores. You had Circuit City. You had Best Buy. You had Walmart. You had Target. Walmart alone was like 52% of our business, our overall business. And then I think Target was number 2 and Best Buy was number 3 and Circuit City fit in there somewhere. And when the CD craze took over, all those bins, well, first of all, that wiped out the Tara Records and the Warehouses and the Licorice Pizza and Sam Goodies. The big box stores got rid of their record bins and put in shelf space for CDs.
Right.
And okay, it was an adaptation that you had to make. Now when I go into, I don't know about Walmart, but I know every time my wife drags me into Target, and she does that quite often, and I have to go.
Oh, you're told to go. You have to go.
Well, I got to keep the spending down somehow, because she gets very freeform in a Target.
In Target, interesting.
Yeah,
well, we all have our crosses to bear.
I'm going to go get prescriptions, honey. I'll go with you.
Yeah.
Because next thing I know, she's in housewares and bedding and
coming home with camping equipment.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't camp.
Yeah. I don't camp. We really needed that tiki torch. Oh, it'll look great in the backyard. Yeah, it's 22 degrees and snowing right now. Anyway, I digress. But I'm noticing now that Target has a vinyl record section. And so we've almost come full circle. Now, it's not the deep pool it was back in the 70s, 80s, and to a certain extent the 90s. But I'm glad to see that even the big box retailers are getting back on the vinyl record bandwagon.
And Barnes & Noble was ahead of that curve 10 years ago, 8 years ago. They had their own vinyl section. They've since gotten rid of the vinyl section and put it more into games, like these, high, very niche games, puzzle games and stuff, which is where a lot of entertainment dollars are being spent right now. But you're not, the way that I look at vinyl now is you have to have a certain level of stardom, if you will, of audience to get a vinyl record printed, because otherwise they're going to just put you into a streaming sense and let you build it up. It's very much like it was in the early 60s. You would put singles out, and single after single after single. You wouldn't put an album out until you were a proven artist that could support putting an album out. Then once Sgt. Pepper's hit, and Pet Sounds hit, then all of a sudden everybody had to put an album out. Everybody had to have 44 minutes of, masterpiece to go. And that's not sustainable because you don't have that many artists. And then when you couple the fact that arc of pop music has changed so much, you're not going to get 20 artists a year putting out masterpieces. It's not going to happen. You're going to get 2 or 3, which is more normal.
And sustainable. And realistic for the person who buys music.
Right.
Especially at the price of vinyl these days. But I think when we look back at what a record cost, in the 70s and early 80s, it was, I don't know, $4, $5, $6, $7, maybe $10 if that.
Yeah, but as a kid, you were making $20 a week, maybe.
Yeah. So you had to put gas in the car and whatever. These days, it's more from my mindset, yes, it helps the mom and pop record retailers, which I'm all about. Everybody that knows me and listens to this show knows that I'm for the indie artists and I'm for the underdog. Nothing against the record labels, nothing against major artists, but if I'm going to throw a flare into a fire, it's going to be for the independent artist and for the mom and pop retail. This came up today, very timely, and it said, did you know that just one CD or vinyl sale earns more income for an artist than 200 hours of streaming? One CD or vinyl sell for an artist earns more than 200 hours of streaming. One $20 to $25 album earns about the same as the royalties paid on 5,000 track streams. Now, streams are different than MP3s, but I believe that Record Day, which this year's for 2024, we're really helping those artists along with those mom and pop stores, because not every artist is into vinyl, but more and more artists are getting into it.
And if the consumers demand it, that's where they're going to go.
Yeah.
That's just the way that works.
And it's become more of a merch piece at a show now than you never used to. Now, artists used to sell CDs.
Right.
And when the MP3 craze happened, they would sell thumb drives, which I never got. But anyway, I think it's great that they're now selling vinyl at shows. And I love the idea that they're doing that, and they've got placement in mom and pop stores. Amoeba Records in LA is a prime example of a vinyl store that's being very, very successful. Third Man Records here in Nashville, same thing. They're selling vinyl. I don't even know if they sell any other format of music other than vinyl in those two stores. And I've been in both, Amoeba in Hollywood and Third Man here in Nashville. And I love the concept that I can go in there and spend some time turning the record over and looking and seeing where it was recorded and when it was recorded and who played on it. What you and I call the liner notes.
Music is probably the most personal and the most important of all the arts. It's the one, like we spoke about on Between the Notes so many times. It attacks you in such a close to your heart personal way. And we've allowed ourselves to be separated from that by technology. And don't be fooled into thinking that the CD is dead. The CD is not dead. The sales are very strong for CDs. The sales are strong for vinyl. Where actually sales are kind of weak right now is in downloading high quality streams, right? To go to a place like HD Tracks, which is based out of Chicago, David Chesky's little thing that he's got going on there, right? It's a wonderful thing. You can get really high quality albums, 196 kilohertz by 24, not to get too wonky with this, but very high resolution, and download them for yourselves. I love doing that. I love when music sounds great. And I think the record industry and the music industry needs to get back and insist on quality. We've been duped into low quality now for 20 years. There's a generation of people out there who have lost the quality train, just don't understand it. Now, I'll jump in real quick. There's a little store down in Columbia, Tennessee. It's about an hour south, down by where I live, about an hour south in Nashville. And it's just an old school record store, and it's owned by an old school record store kind of guy. And you go in there and you rifle through it. Every town's starting to have them right now. But the most delightful thing is my son brought my granddaughter, his daughter down there. She's like 7 or so, and let her pick out a bunch of Taylor Swift records and then some other things to get her involved in vinyl. That's fantastic, because now what we're doing is we're saving this quality musical listening experience and giving it to the next generation. And ironically, my son's of that generation where the MP3 was king and quality didn't matter. We're never going to escape the importance of music, and we're never going to escape the quality of music, and that's why Record Store Day is such a big deal. You're helping, like you said, mom and pop stores. You're helping artists. You're maintaining a legacy of things, and there is nothing sweeter than sitting on the couch with a nice little cocktail or something and listening to an album and looking at the liner notes and having that Japanese tea ceremony experience of getting up after 22 minutes and flipping it over. You have suddenly gone from a passive listener to an active participant in the music that you like. That in and of itself, to me, blows it away, makes it super, super important.
I love what you just said. The Japanese tea ceremony.
I got that, actually. I would love to take credit for that. That came from Leyland Sklar, the bass player.
Right.
I had a conversation with him many years ago, and it's just stuck with me forever. So, Leyland, thank you, because I'm still using that line, and I'm sure he forgot that he even said it.
It is the experience of listening to music unlike we've ever had before or since. With that being said, we're going to take another break, get another word into a couple more of our sponsors, and when we come back with Jack Sharkey, we're going to continue to dig a little deeper here.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Branding. What is it really? It goes by many names. Marketing, licensing, and image. When in reality, it's 7 key branding formulas that all need to harmonize perfectly. Mess up just one formula and you have compromised the whole brand build. Dead Horse Branding facilitates all 7 formulas under one roof, building, promoting, and marketing all brands at all different stages of their level. We are a marketing team's dream, and we were built to service talent, artist managers, record labels, independent artists, iconic brands, legacy estates, and startups. Rooted in music and seated across other industries like fashion, various talent, hospitality, authors, interior designers, lifestyle brands, and corporate entities. The 7 branding formulas do not discriminate. 7 branding formulas, all in one swift movement. Sick of beating that dead horse? Come to Dead Horse. Please visit us at deadhorsebranding.com or send us an email to info@deadhorsebranding.com.
As a musician, you have a dream. That vision of what success looks like for you. Though it's not only about the money, money is a part of it. Whether you've been extremely successful or just striving to maintain a regular cash flow, you need a plan. Money Concepts can help you develop a customized plan to achieve the financial stability and success you want. For over 40 years, Money Concepts has been providing holistic financial planning services to individuals, families, and business owners. As an independent firm, Money Concepts and their associates are committed to always represent the best interest of the client. It's really about independence coupled with committed benevolent interest, which means that they can represent your client, not a product supplier. It's not about selling products. It's about helping you achieve success. To learn how this can benefit you, contact John Adams at 737-867-9309. That's 737-867-9309 for more information.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio here in Nashville, Tennessee, sitting across the podcast table, the grand poobah of Between the Notes, which is somewhat of a limited edition that we do here on the show. We don't do it every week, but we do it on special occasions about once a month or so, and the topics of conversation are very special, and that's how Jack and I like to approach this. It's not the norm. We appreciate our listeners listening. We've talked about vinyl, and now let's kind of get into the MP3 world, because I remember when Napster came out, and I was at the label back in those days, and we all signed up for Napster at the label to see what was going on. And I have to say, the quality in those early days was piss poor.
Yeah. You could actually hear the dithering. You could hear the high frequency would waver, and it was just atrocious. But people have a really great capacity to ignore ugliness for convenience, and that's what bit the music business in the butt for the next quarter century now.
This was before streaming.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the quality of the MP3 would come off of a CD or a vinyl record, a lot of times CD, most occasions CDs. And yet somehow in the early days of MP3 reproduction, they still screwed it up.
Sure. Because the technology wasn't there, and the care and the concern wasn't there. So this is my soapbox moment. This is where I kind of go off. Because
I've got one right here. Please stand on it.
So the history of the MP3 is really the history of the computer industry, more so than it is of the music industry.
Ah.
Back in the day, late 80s, storage was expensive, and you would have machines. I worked in the computer industry during that time. I was out of the music business. I was purely in the computer industry. And for data storage, you would have a machine roughly the size of a dishwasher with platters that would be, 4 platters, 4 12-inch platters that would hold a whopping 8 kilobytes of data, right? I now have a little thumb drive that's, I just actually bought a little drive that goes into my streaming device that I just bought. That's 3 terabytes. That was roughly the size of my iPhone, actually about half the size of my iPhone. So that gives you an idea where storage went. Well, you could only carry in an iPod back in the early 2000s or late 1990s when they were getting developed, you would maybe only be able to carry around 1 or 2 songs, let alone an album, with that level of storage. So this was a problem. So what we had to do was compress the music. And when I say we, I mean just the world had to compress the music. So the song, and actually an album that I have used as a tuning to tune more systems than I can count, both commercially and in private, is Suzanne Vega's Solitude Standing. Wonderful, wonderful record. Came out maybe in 85 or 86. And there's a song on there called Tom's Diner. Do, 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 right? Everybody knows the song. Well, the uber nerd scientist who was working on these algorithms to compress music was having great success with songs, off of CDs. And when I talk about compression, what we're actually doing is we're taking bits and pieces out of the song.
Right.
So we can squish it and make it fit into your iPhone or your storage device, back then your iPod.
A little bit off the top, a little bit off the bottom.
And a lot out of the middle.
It's kind of like a haircut.
Exactly. The only problem is that hair, when you cut it, doesn't come back. So he hears Tom's Diner on a radio, and he goes, I wonder what my algorithm would do with that song. And you go listen to it. It's a beautifully recorded, naturally recorded song. Well, his algorithm just made it almost unrecognizable. So the MP3 actually came out of AT&T in Murray Hill, New Jersey. We're celebrating New Jersey. Bell Labs, baby. Bell Labs in New Jersey. If you were a tech geek like me in the 1980s, that was your dream place to work. And a young man by the name of Karl-Heinz Brandenburg, he is the guy who invented the MP3. He tailored the algorithm to take just enough out of Tom's Diner to make it sound reasonable without destroying it. So that's really an important thing, because now what was removed from it were the air pushing through her teeth, the swallows, the ambiance of the room, the reverb. It just became very, very much like this.
But this is being done without the permission
Absolutely.
of the artist.
Absolutely it is. Yeah, the artist's intention was never to have that. So now we fast forward about 10 years from this was like roughly 1991. We come out to about 1999 or 2000, and we get involved with Apple and other companies who were doing portable digital players. There were a lot more on the market that were way higher quality than Apple, by the way, who have been forgotten to time now because they weren't Apple. So now what we want to do is we want to be able to fit 100 songs, 200 songs on an iPod, right, with our little earbuds, and it's convenience. Again, humans have a wonderful capacity for accepting ugliness if it's convenient. And this is no more true than it is in the technology evolution of music. So now we can cram all these songs onto your iPod, and you can drive around and go, listen to me, right? Whatever, go on the subway and listen to it. But meanwhile, all of the beauty of the song is gone. It's just gone. It's been taken out, because what do you remove when you remove a song? And bear with me, but if you're in the music industry, you're going to appreciate what I'm about to say. You remove harmonics. You remove space, you remove decay, you hit a piano note, boing, and it goes on and on and on. Well, after a while, I got to cut that out because it's taking up too much space.
You're removing the texture of the song.
Beautifully put.
The feel and the touch of it.
Right. The humanness, the emotion, you're turning it into a machine. That's what you're doing. And so from 2000 to about now, basically music became very mechanical and very machine-like. And we have two generations of people who grew up understanding that this is what we listen to. Now, R&B music has not changed in 25 years. It is very deep bass. It's chording. It's like what we would call a pad synthesizer up top for tension. Guitars are gone. There's maybe some keyboards to give you some basic chord structure, and then melody with very few harmonies, very few complex tapestries of sound. Why? Because we can't hear all that garbage, so we say. So why do we put it in there? Well, the thing is that garbage, quote unquote, is the humanity of a song. So, if you're thinking about pop music not changing in 24, 25 years, I'm talking about the stuff that's on the radio, that's on American Idol, that, whatever, R&B music, whatever it happens to be, it's dreadfully boring at this point because nothing new is happening. The reason why nothing new is happening because consumers listen on their earbuds and they can't handle all those other things. Generally, I'm making big generalizations here.
Does that now put music into that spectrum of background noise?
That's all it is. It's a commodity that is just out there. And it's just banging away. And we actually, in order to protect our sanity, something we've touched on the business side several times, we've had to shut it off. We've had to tune it out because it takes up too much processing power in our brains to listen to all this, so we have to shut it down. So now, the cycle is, consumers don't want to listen to complex musical tapestries. They want to listen to very basic things, so that's what we're going to produce. Consumers now don't understand complex musical tapestries, so they just buy what they've been fed to buy. And we're on a hamster wheel now of music, and it's horrific. Every time somebody says, well, they don't make music now like they used to, BS. I caught myself there. I got ahead of the editors on that one. It's nonsense because there's artists out there who are brilliant, who have been influenced by all these other artists who are ready to just burst out and make great music, but the market isn't really willing to spend the money on that yet.
Which makes it tougher for that artist to sell those $20 or $25 vinyl records at a show.
Yes. Yeah.
Because the consumer's not willing to take the time to invest in that.
And they don't understand, and I'm not trying to belittle or condescend or do anything like that. I'm not trying to put myself in a hoity-toity position, but we've been conditioned to not understand the importance of the tapestry, the importance of reverb, the importance of ambience, and all those things that make a song very human, that get your heart racing and all. So why Record Store Day is as important as it is because there's a shred of us out there who are hanging on to this, and we're hoping that it grows and it grows and it grows. And in fact, over the last 14 years, it has grown. So, that's a bit of the history of the MP3. What happened is because storage now became cheap and small, we're able to fit scads of music onto an iPhone, but we can fit even more music on when it's MP3s or it's low quality. But what we're giving up, again, the theme of the day, is we're giving up beauty for convenience. And it's sad because, every minute that you don't spend having your heart stolen or broken or a memory come back to remind you of something beautiful that happened in your life, or just hearing a melody that sends shivers down your spine, is a minute wasted. And that's what technology has actually done. So it's time for us to get back to using technology to get the art across to people. And so if you're a young artist coming out, I would be, like we spoke about disruptors a couple of months ago. If you're that young artist or you're that young business person right now, I would demand the absolute highest quality, because once people get turned on to that and those rich tapestries of music, man, you don't go back. You don't go back. That's what you want to listen to. So it's time for the art side of the industry to start driving the technology side of the industry. Soapbox off.
But I think that the art side of the industry can now drive that.
They can.
They just got to be willing to do it.
They have to step up.
They've got to step up. Yeah, I agree.
So that's, kind of a little bit about where we're at. Record Store Day is obviously a lot deeper than it would appear on the surface, and that's a really good thing. And there's manufacturers out there making wonderful bits of kit. There's never been a time in the history of human people that for, under $5,000 or $4,000, you could get a hold of an entertainment system that'll make your life just infinitely better for years and years and years to come. And we've been conditioned to not care.
We have become a disposable society.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you and I, and you more so than me, we have great stereo systems in our house. once again, you more so than me, because I've seen yours and I'm envious. But at the same time, we take the time to develop these systems, buy the right components, buy the right turntable and the needle and the correct speakers, because we want to listen to music in that proper environment.
Yeah, there's nothing, from an artistic point of view, there is nothing more satisfying to me or important to me, and a lot of the hoods that I run with, as my mom used to say, those hoods that you run with, than hearing music in all its majesty. It's awe-inspiring, and that's something we don't consider much anymore, is awe. We just, or awe. When I am awestruck by some dopey song from some artist because I hear something in there that, it's for that moment in time, it's life-changing. So for that moment in time, my life is infinitely better than it would have been had I been listening to it on a pair of earbuds in an MP3 player.
I still go back to the days of albums that I listened to in the 70s as a teenager, and I listen to those same songs today, and I always hear something new.
It's the most fun thing that can happen when you know a song and you've listened to a song for years and years and years, and you go, wait a minute, what was that?
I just recently streamed Stevie Wonder's Songs in the Key of Life, which to me is not his classic end of his career, but it was very commercial. But I remember it was a double EP, and it just had some great music on it.
Oh yeah, it's a wonderful record.
And I listened to it, and I went, man, I don't remember these songs sounding this great.
Yeah.
And I was probably 18, 19 years old when that album came out. That's how we've got to get back to listening to music. And I think that's where we've got to come in and start supporting these mom and pop record stores.
Yeah. And there's another way to do it. If vinyl is maybe not your thing for whatever reason, get out of Spotify. I'm not saying leave Spotify behind. I'm saying get out of Spotify for your music. Go to these other streaming platforms like Tidal and Qobuz, which is Qobuz, and Deezer, which is a French company.
And you just brought up something before we started the show on Deezer.
Yeah, Deezer is basically a high quality Spotify, right? They're out there. You can get a hold of them for $20 a month or something like that, which is a little bit more than you're paying for Spotify. Deezer being they just deleted 26 million tracks from their servers, which I take as a really good sign, because there was just a lot of garbage out there and pirated songs and things like that. And then they deleted anything that hadn't been listened to in 12 months. So what that means is the DIY thing has got to change, because everybody can put songs out there. But not everybody deserves to put songs out there, let's be honest. The people who deserve to be heard are the people with that talent, with that drive, and with that knack for making great music. So I applaud Deezer for clearing their servers out, if you will, because it's going to make it easier for me as a human being to find the tracks that I want to find, right? Nothing's more maddening when you go on a Spotify search and you're searching for a song or something, and like 12 or 15 things come up that you've never heard of, and and all these different reboots and remakes and things like that. But do yourself a favor. Do it for 1 month. If you've got a decent stereo system, if you've got a decent pair of headphones even, get off the Spotify train and check out Tidal or Qobuz or Deezer or one of those streaming services. Go out to HD Tracks and buy an album that you particularly love and download it. And then you'll understand what it is that I'm on about, week after week after month, because there's a huge difference. Spotify is really good. It's an AM radio. Spotify helps me find songs. But when I want to listen to them, I don't listen to Spotify because it sounds not good. Sorry, it just doesn't sound good.
Here's a shout out to all of our loyal listeners. Without all of you, we wouldn't be one of the most listened to music industry interview podcasts, including achieving #1 status in many countries around the world, according to Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy our show, please check out our Facebook page at The Business Side of Music Podcast. Please don't forget to subscribe and definitely hit the like button. While you're at it, go to our page on YouTube and click on The Business Side of Music Podcast to subscribe. We do appreciate every person who does that. You can check out our video webcast there and get to see me and our guests, such as Jack Sharkey here in the studio, along with Buddy the Music Dog, who seems to make his home here in our studio. While you're at it, go to our page on YouTube and click on the Business Side of Music podcast to subscribe. We truly appreciate you doing that. You can check out our video webcasts there and get to see me and our guests, such as Jack Sharkey, here in the studio, along with Buddy the Music Dog, who seems to make his home here. Last but not least, check out and follow us on Twitter. I guess we call it X these days, at Biz Music Podcast. That's B-I-Z Music Podcast. Well, here's to Record Day, April 20th, 2024. Please go out and support your mom and pop record stores, support your independent artists, buy those vinyl records off the merch tables. You won't be disappointed.
You will not.
And, you don't always have to buy new. We have a store here in Nashville called McKay's that is pretty much all used books, games, videos, CDs, and they've got an amazing vinyl department that I'll go and spend time in. And even antique stores are now starting to carry vinyl.
You can get some great finds in an antique store for like $2.
Yeah.
Grimey's in Nashville is another one. And then Legacy down in Columbia. Just in our area there. The reason why we mention those for you folks that are not in Nashville is a quick little Google search, and you're going to be surprised what's out there for you to just go in. Princeton Record Exchange in New Jersey, since this is a New Jersey-oriented, that's a destination place to go. On a Saturday, we would just go there and just rifle through the albums and the bins and the things like that. And to me, that's as important as the listening experience.
That is part of the experience.
That's it.
All right. We're going to do this again. Our next topic of conversation, I think, is going to be just as good and probably even a little more volatile.
We might get in an argument. For what I'm hearing, you and I might have our very first argument.
Maybe.
Nah, we won't.
Nah.
No, we won't.
Until the next time.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound designed by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Busan.